everyone, and welcome to Teachings of the Ascended Masters on Fallen Angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. This is episode 1. I'm Stephen Macchio.
And I'm Joseph Macchio.
And we have a lot of information to give to our audience regarding fallen angels, Nephilim, and UFOs.
Right, and that's quite a title. And the subtitle to this, incidentally, is Birds of a Feather Flock Together.
Okay, then we're going to have to explain that in detail.
We will explain
as the
it in
episodes
detail.
Go on.
Right, so what we're going to be doing is actually telling the story of the fallen angels, UFOs and Nephilim. Who are they? Where do they come from? What they did on Earth? What are they doing on Earth?
And why are they here in the first place?
Why are they here in the first place? But where does all this information come from?
Right. This is very important.
That's important because we don't have the full story, for instance, in Scripture. The full story in East and West. But we have a lot of information from the Scriptures of East and the West. But to flush out this story, we're going to have to go to another source. And that source is actually the teachings of the Ascended Masters.
Right.
So before we start the story of the fallen angels, and it's coming right up, we do have to let everyone know and discuss, like, where does the information come from? It comes from the Ascended Masters, through messengers, and it comes from records that can be read, known as Akasha, which we will be getting into.
Because we have to go back in time to really give this story of the fallen angels.
Yes.
And you kind of, in some respects, have to know your origins to understand what was going on in the heaven world that a fall would even happen.
Yes.
So the whole concept of fallen angels,
Yeah.
Nephilim, and how the UFOs tie in with it, you would have to know who the Ascended Masters are.
Yes.
And perhaps we should start with exactly that. Who are the Ascended Masters, and how long have they been around? The Ascended Masters have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, evolving alongside of us. Isn't that true?
Yes, that is very true.
So they're not people that are so far away from us that we can't relate to them. We don't know who they are.
Right.
They're something that, I could never be that.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of this whole understanding of who the Ascended Masters are, because they are people that were just like us, who embodied on Earth alongside of us for a very, very long time. And but they have done something that we have not yet done yet.
And I think I know what that is.
What is that?
The Ascension. The Ascension usually in Christianity is relegated to Jesus alone. He's the only one that's supposed to have made the Ascension.
Right.
But we know that thousands and thousands or more of the Masters have made the Ascension.
Right, and this is something that's more common in Eastern philosophies and Eastern religions, the idea of breaking the cycle of rebirth. I think most people have understood the idea of reincarnation. And you can go all the way back to Gautama Buddha, who broke the cycle of rebirth, attained enlightenment. He did stay in embodiment for that for that whole cycle there, and then made his ascension.
And the figures that we know, I mean, we have Gautama Buddha, we have Moses, we have Krishna, we have Jesus, we have Milarepa, we have Confucius.
Right.
All of these are actually in the ascended state. And of course, Enoch from the Bible also ascended. But there are also individuals that, like you were saying before, are completely unknown.
Right.
There are people that worked as policemen. They worked in or outside the church. They worked in the kitchen.
Right.
I mean, any kind of
in other
job
words,
or
you don't have to have a
level,
religious affiliation
not necessarily,
to make an ascension.
No, you don't.
You could have you could be part of any religion of the world's religions. You can maybe you're not interested in religion, but your service to man is such that you balance tremendous amounts of karma, and you are on your way to making your ascension. Now, ascending to what is what we want to talk about also.
That's
ascending to a God source, or how
a
would
God source, and for that we would have to show you this wonderful chart of your divine self. And we have this in 3 versions. We actually have it in the Christian version and the Buddhist version, as well as the Hindu version. But the source we're speaking of is known in this activity of the ascended masters as the I am presence. It's also known as the monad, the divine self,
or the God source,
the God source, the Atman. And it is an emanation from the great cosmic central sun.
So the idea.
So it's individualized, and that's the important thing. It's individualized for every person, and that is what you ascend to. But it doesn't necessarily mean, like in the Christian understanding, that a physical body necessarily floats up into space.
Right.
We have to, that should be clarified too, because.
So an ascended master.
What is ascending?
Right. Ascending is then when we talk about an ascended master who is ascended.
Yeah.
If you look at the chart that we have, where the lower figure, where the soul is evolving, would move up to what is depicted as Jesus, the Christ, or the Christ self, the universal Christ mind.
Yes.
And then when those two are bonded and fused together, they then move up to the highest depiction of the God source, which is the top figure of that chart. And once you are there, there is a process called the Ascension, which then seals you, and you are always now in an ascended state with free will and with your individuality intact.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe we can go really quickly through the Buddhist chart, which the middle figure is depicted differently in the Buddhist chart and in the Hindu chart.
Well, in the Buddhist chart, you see the lower figure as the soul, or jiva, or the part that is the embodied self. And the middle figure in the Buddhist chart would be known in Mahayana Buddhism as the Sambhogakaya. It's the mediating figure. It's the body of enjoyment or bliss. And then the top figure would be known as, in Buddhist terminology, as the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya, the vehicle of the divine law, the vehicle of Buddhic law, L-A-W. So you want to look at the Hindu now.
Yep.
We have the lower figure as, again, in the Sanskrit, the jiva, J-I-V-A, which is the evolving, what we would call a soul. And the middle figure in the Hindu would be Vishnu or Krishna, fulfilling the basic same understanding as the mediator, or the connection between the evolving soul and the God self, or in this case, the Atman in Hinduism, or the Paramatman, which would be the supreme self.
Right. So the middle figure is emanated out of that top figure, which is the God source. And the soul is also now descending into these realms for spiritual evolution, for the sake of spiritual evolution.
Yes, and for the sake of learning with free will what is good, what is evil, how to conquer the matter realms and not get caught in the matter realms.
Right.
But how to have self-mastery. So an ascended master is one who has mastered the self, knows the self as God, basically. And the soul then goes through a process of evolution from lifetime after lifetime.
Right. Now, also, we know that the ascended masters, when we use that term, which is a very generalized term, also refers to all of the, or most of, all of the Hindu gods and goddesses, and a lot of the Roman and Greek gods, right?
Because you have Apollo, you have Pallas Athena, you have Poseidon. These were once on Earth, sometimes eons and eons ago, and they made the ascension, and they were worshipped as gods, although ascended masters and cosmic beings don't wish to be worshipped per se, but they really want us to emulate them and follow the same path they followed, which is basically called the path of initiation.
Right. I remember you remember those names when we were kids. You watched these movies and you saw something about Hercules. You saw something about Pallas Athena, as you said. You have those magnificent books, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Yes.
You know, difficult to understand, but Pallas Athena is a very big part of those books.
Yes, and that's amazing thing you brought up. Pallas Athena is really the teacher and guru of Odysseus.
Yeah.
So you see the guru-chela relationship right there.
Or the master-disciple.
The
in the Western
master-disciple.
world, that's what we would use.
Yeah.
Now let's maybe talk about some ascended masters that are of more modern time. We have various names that may not be familiar to you, but their embodiments would be.
Yes, they would be.
For example, let's take the Mahatma Kuthumi
Yes.
and Moria, who worked with the Theosophical Society. Right, they helped establish that with Madame Blavatsky.
Yep.
And Kuthumi was embodied as Thutmose, correct? The
Thutmose the third,
right?
yeah, one of the pharaohs of Egypt. Yeah.
Now that's a very famous embodiment, and now he had many embodiments after that, but
Yeah.
we're just picking out some embodiments that people would know offhand right away who that would be. What else? What other ascended masters?
Well, it looks like he also was, and everyone knows this, the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. That's the 6th century BC, and he started a mystery school or an esoteric school basically in southern Italy. And he was also one of the wise men that visited Jesus at his birth, Balthazar, one of the 3 magi.
Right.
And he also was a very, very famous figure that we know very well, and that was St. Francis of Assisi.
Oh, okay.
So
everybody,
you see, we
right.
go through different experiences, East and West, different embodiments, and different dharmas and different duties that we have to do to life and to serve people.
And all during this time, the soul is evolving spiritually through these processes.
Yes.
We also have a very famous individual, Saint Germain, who was embodied as Francis Bacon, correct? And the prophet Samuel in, was that 1st century somewhere, 1st century
somewhere
BC?
Somewhere around the 11th century BC. So the Master Saint Germain was Francis Bacon. Before that, he was Samuel, the prophet Samuel in the Book of Kings, and Saint Alban.
Saint Alban, I see.
He was a martyr.
And then we can come a little bit more to modern time and talk about how the Ascended Masters get their message out. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about prophets, or the idea of a prophet, or the idea of a messenger, which we understand that the idea of having a prophet goes all the way back to the Old Testament.
Yes.
And you could almost interchange that word and intersperse the word messenger.
You could.
You could have had messengers in the Old Testament times who brought a specific messenger. Because, it's very interesting how sometimes when you would read the Old Testament, the prophet would start out saying something like, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying," and then the prophet would speak something.
Exactly.
It could have been short, it could be very long.
Yeah.
And it's like he's taking a message from ascended beings who are using this vehicle to get their message across. Would you think that would be
and I think that those who were the prophets and messengers definitely had to be trained in previous lives for that as well. But the term prophet from the Greek actually just means someone speaking for someone else, which what you just said, it's actually a messenger.
It's a simple thing.
So that is the basis of the Ascended Masters contacting people, and that's where the teachings come from. The teachings of the Ascended Masters come from that realm through individuals that were trained and anointed to give out the word. Now, we have the same thing basically in ancient Greece with the oracle.
Oh, that's right.
The oracle at Delphi, and this went back way beyond recorded history, although we do find oracles in recorded history.
Right.
It really goes back way beyond that, maybe 10,000 BC, way before that, where there were oracles and they gave messages from the quote gods, which were cosmic beings or ascended masters, and so it's a very, very, but then we have this going on, and then we get up from ancient times, we come now to modern times.
Right. The Ascended Masters don't stop giving their message out.
No.
I mean, they may stop for a certain amount of time.
Yes.
Because I believe that the evolutions of a given planet, spiritually speaking, have to warrant the coming of a messenger.
That is true. Karmically warranted.
Right. So times can go by, like the Dark Ages. You had the Dark Ages for a while where there wasn't too many people speaking for what the Ascended Masters would want to get across to the population.
Not publicly, at least.
Yeah, right.
But there were mystery schools that were secret. There were secret societies where certain teachings that were kept and were known in the ancient world were still being disseminated, and people were actually in secret still being trained in these teachings that we have today. And these are the actual same teachings we have today that the Summit Lighthouse actually publishes.
Right, and people used to get upset of the idea that they were either secret or mystical, thinking that they were like taboo. But from another point of view, if they weren't secret, if they weren't hidden to some degree, the masses would go crazy. I mean, you saw what happened to the Salem witch trials.
Yes.
If you knew herbology, or you knew certain things of how to heal with various plants, you could be considered a witch. And you're done. So I can understand why some of these teachings would have been kept secretive. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to know, or it's something that's so occult that, it's magical, almost moving into a world that you don't want to mess around with.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say something about that.
Thanks for clarifying that.
That it's not a, it's something that's been going on for a very, very long time.
Yes, definitely.
So let's maybe bring it all the way up to modern times. I believe that the Ascended Masters contacted the Ballards in the 1930s, and they established the I Am movement.
Yes, it was called the I Am Religious Activity, or the I Am Activity. Guy and Edna Ballard in the early 1930s, and the Master Saint Germain was behind this and sponsored these messengers. And at that point, we had, again, the giving of dictations as in the days of the Old Testament. We had the Master coming. We had them speaking through the messengers physically, as the messenger would stand there up at the podium, and the Master would come and give a message. This actually started, the giving of messages started with the Theosophical Society, founded in 1875. But in that case, there were letters written, various letters and communications from the masters to the various members in Theosophy.
Right.
Including
and some
Blavatsky.
of those masters were not, they were adepts.
They were adepts.
And in a final embodiment, ready to make their ascension.
Yes.
But had the ability to translate information.
Yes.
That was unheard of at the time.
Yeah, it was unheard of.
Right.
Because it became public. What was held in the mystery religions became public in Theosophy. We have the understanding of reincarnation, the understanding of divine self. We have the understanding of evolution and the eons of evolution. They taught that everything starts in spirit, resolves into matter, and rises up from matter to spirit.
And that goes for the evolutions of a planet, and it goes for the planet itself and all the things that live on it.
Yeah.
Rather than the creationist idea where you have the concept of a God so powerful that just goes poof, and there it is, it's created, and there's no previous evolution, and whatever is created evolves for a short time, and whatever happens, happens.
Maybe one life.
Maybe one. No, I would need much more than one life.
Yeah, I would too.
A few hundred.
Well, certainly.
It takes a while to spiritually evolve. That's something that people don't really talk about. They talk about a physical evolution, but they don't talk about a spiritual evolution where the soul itself has to learn. So I guess they think people that have a soul, that it knows everything, and that it can't forget, or it can't be traumatized, or things can't happen to it.
Well, it goes through a lot of opposition, and we're going to be talking about some of that opposition that the soul goes through. But of course, if it makes karma, the soul makes karma, negative karma, which in the West is called, quote, sin. And so it makes karma, and that kind of sometimes makes the process of embodiment longer, because certain debts were not paid and so forth.
So that's why I've been around so long.
That's why you've been around so long.
Thanks for letting me know. I know. All right, so let's move up a little bit forward more now to after the Ballards and
After
the
the
I Am
Ballards,
activity.
Yeah.
Then Saint Germain and the Ascended Master El Morya
Yes.
are looking for other messengers to work through because they must have a certain dispensation to work with, a certain amount of time where they can train messengers and use them as
Yeah.
vehicles in
Yeah.
order to get their message across, correct?
Yes.
So then we come up to Mark L. Prophet and Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
Yes.
You want to talk about those two a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Mark Prophet had many interesting embodiments. He was Origin of Alexandria. He was the great pharaoh Akhenaten in 1300 BC. He was Aesop, a Greek slave, and that is in the 6th century BC. He was also the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, as well as St. Bonaventure. So I'm mentioning these embodiments to show the variety, and many of us had the same variety in our embodiments, but also to show that someone who's trained as a messenger has many embodiments of contacting the divine self, of training in it, of being initiated, of being taught, and so forth.
So that process itself takes a long, long time. And there could be
Yes.
times where you have embodiments where you're just not connecting, you're not there, and they have
Yes.
to forego that embodiment, and then the person lives out that lifetime, passes from
Yeah.
the screen of life, re-embodies, and because there's that veil of forgetfulness
Yes.
when you descend from the etheric realms, the heaven world, if you want to call it that, come into a physical body, there's a certain forgetfulness. But as you move along in spiritual evolution, the soul itself has a memory, and it will remember, this is my mission.
Yes.
This is what I'm supposed to do in
Yes.
this lifetime.
Yes.
And then you have this training. And so you talked about Mark L. Prophet, and then we also have Mark L. Prophet with Elizabeth Clare Prophet.
Elizabeth Clare Prophet came after Mark, and she was the twin flame, which we're not going to go into, but the twin flame of Mark Prophet. Everyone has a twin flame. And Mark Prophet founded the Summit Lighthouse through the Master Morya, El Morya, M-O-R-Y-A, who also worked in the Theosophical Society. And this was 1958 when the Summit Lighthouse was founded. The teachings of the Ascended Masters now were to be published in a new and more complete format, taking up where the other organizations left off, but also including the teachings of those other organizations.
And a lot more detail
Yeah.
is added
Yes.
from what we had during the I Am movement through the Ballards.
Yes.
And I think that is because the evolutions of Earth and the souls evolving here warrant that information. It seems to be like there are cycles where
Yeah.
more information, more detailed information, and that information is sometimes read from an Akashic record, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It is read from the
Maybe we
Akashic.
explain the Akashic record.
Yeah, we're going to explain that, and I'd like to read the definition of that so it's clear what the Akashic records are, because during this whole class and all of these episodes we're going to be presenting to you, much of the information is not understood in the historical stream. In other words, it is either so far back that the masters and the messengers have to go to Akasha, which is to get the information. So, Stephen, hand me my memorandum. Well, thank you.
My memorandum. All this to read Akashic.
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to read
All right.
Akasha. This is Sanskrit. Akasha, from the Sanskrit root kas, K-A-S, meaning to appear or to shine. Akasha is primary substance, the subtlest ethereal essence which fills all space. This energy records or absorbs all of the impressions of life. These records can be read by adepts or ascended masters. The messengers were also able to read the Akashic records.
I got to put it back to
Certainly you have to put it back.
So basically what you're telling me there is I can't get away with anything. every word,
You cannot.
deed, thought,
That's right.
movements is all recorded.
Yes.
And this is what we're talking about, the history of unrecorded history, that if you go back all the way to the times of Atlantis and even further back than that to Lemuria, everything that happened there, to
Yes.
all of the evolutions,
Yes.
are recorded in Akasha.
Yes.
I wonder
recorded.
who thought of that.
It's like a movie. In other words, if you were sensitive to the Akashic records, you take a trip to Rome, and you go in the forum, and if you can read and tune into the Akashic records, you will actually see when it was being constructed or the way the buildings looked, in the first century
Right.
or 200 BC or 200 AD.
Now, it's not only the messengers that are connected to ascended masters that could read the Akashic records. Could other people read the Akashic records or get impressed by them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, some people are more sensitive than others. It's very important to do a reading that is accurate, and that's why a lot of times we rely on the messengers and the masters to read the Akashic records. But it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else cannot read them, because a lot of people nowadays are more sensitive, and they actually can read the records.
So this is something that,
or as you say, an impression,
right,
like authors.
right. I was going to say authors or screenwriters,
Yes.
producers could get impressions of an Akashic record,
Yeah.
and it comes out in a certain way, maybe not in extreme detail, as you were saying, as like watching a movie,
Yeah.
but it comes out in a certain way whereby there's an impression and there's a story written, and it brings up that record
Yes.
even for the people.
Yes.
That's an amazing thing. So I think we covered the Akashic records, and that's going to account for the unwritten history and some of the new revelations that we are going to be revealing in all of these episodes regarding really the history of our planet, what has happened way back when, coming all the way to current
Yes.
times.
Yes.
Correct? And
So we have an exciting topic, as we know, fallen angels, Nephilim, and UFOs,
right.
which is very interesting. So kind of the subtitle of this all is Birds of a Feather Flock Together.
That's a good one. All right.
And they're all, you'll find out that they're all of the same vibration. It's what everybody has heard of fallen angels, right? I mean, it's not like their existence has been discussed, but we want to know, could they really exist? Are they mythology? Are they part of the mythology of India or the ancient Hebrews? I mean, have people in general taken their, existence seriously?
Right, right. Could be
And that's
angels
a question.
also. Angels, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, look at the planet today. Look at the planet
I've
today.
been looking at it.
Yeah, that's why you're sick of it. You're sick.
There's a lot of issues.
Okay,
that have been going around.
we got hatred, we got riots, we got viruses, and some people don't know whether to laugh or cry. So we got war, we got shootings, we got terrorism, amorality,
And this has been going on
insensitivity to
for a
life.
long time. I mean, I think that
thousands of years.
you could almost say, and I think that the Ascended Masters have sometimes referred to this planet as a warring planet. You can
Yes,
go as
they
far
have.
back as you can go back thousands
have.
of years, and there's constant wars, some of them small, some of them very large.
Yep.
And what is behind these wars? Who's behind these wars?
That's the
this is what we're
question.
going to be getting into,
What are we missing?
Right.
What are we not seeing?
And is some of this just the karma of a race? Is it the karma of the people on the planet? Or is it something
Interesting.
else? Is the karma being manipulated? Can karma be manipulated? These are some of the things that
Or
we'd
are
like
they?
to cover.
Well, that's right.
Right.
It can be, but we're looking at karma. We're looking at the presence of fallen angels, and we're also wondering, if the principles of religion are abandoned. Let's say, like in scientific humanism, for instance, would people be in a state of vulnerability if they abandon religious principles? Not necessarily a specific religion.
It's spiritual principles.
Spiritual principles that are known in all the mystery religions and all the religions. Whatever you want to name them or call them.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. And where is the good that humanity does? Because there is positive karma. There is karma that where people every time there's something negative going on, there's always a point and a counterpoint, and there are other people on the planet that are doing very good for themselves and for
Yes.
humanity.
Yes.
So you have
Yes.
this balance, this interesting between good karma and negative karma, and it has to balance out. So we're going to have to find out why and who's behind it or what's behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, what
You can say that mankind is reaping what they've sown. Like, for instance, what could the virus be? Could the virus be something that comes from an evil source, or is it a karma on the people because of vulnerability?
Right, right.
And we're asking these questions. We're not always giving exact answers at this point.
But when we get into the fallen angels, Nephilim, and UFOs, we will be giving new information, as we had said.
Yes.
So please stay tuned to the other episodes as we go deeper into this whole mystery of fallen angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. And where is the good that man has done, and can it be manipulated? Has it been manipulated? These are some of the ideas and thoughts that we're going to be investigating through the Ascended Masters' teachings.
Right.
So that probably concludes this episode, and we'd like to see you again for the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.